Imagine standing on a remote Alaskan shore. The year is 1802. A group of Tlingit warriors, armed with traditional weapons and fueled by fierce determination, silently surrounds a heavily fortified Russian trading post. This isn't just a skirmish. It's the boiling point of a decades-long struggle for land, resources, and survival. What you're about to witness is the real story of the Battle of Sitka, a pivotal clash you probably never learned about in history class. Welcome back to our channel, where we uncover the forgotten chapters of history. Today, we're diving deep into the Russian-Tlingit War, a conflict that defined the future of Alaska. This wasn't a simple story of colonizers versus natives. It was a complex power struggle between the expanding Russian Empire and the proud, powerful Tlingit people who had called this land home for millennia. Let's rewind to the mid-18th century. Russian fur traders known as promishlenniki began pushing east across the Bering Strait, drawn by the immense wealth of sea otter pelts or soft gold. Their methods were often brutal. They would take native villagers hostage, forcing the men to hunt for them under threat of violence. For a time, this strategy worked with some Aleut communities who were subjugated by the Russians' superior firepower. But when the Russians reached the lands of the Tlingit people in southeast Alaska, they met a very different kind of resistance. The Tlingit were not a scattered collection of small villages. They were a sophisticated and formidable society with a strong warrior tradition, complex social structures, and extensive trade networks. They saw the Russians not as powerful masters, but as unwelcome competitors encroaching on their territory and disrupting their way of life. The initial encounters were tense. Trade happened, but it was often punctuated by skirmishes and mutual distrust. The flashpoint came in 1799. Alexander Baranov, the ambitious manager of the Russian-American Company, established a fort he named Redoubt St. Michael, right in the heart of Tlingit territory, near modern-day Sitka. To the Tlingit, this was an intolerable intrusion. It was a direct challenge to their sovereignty and a threat to their control over the valuable fur trade routes. For 3 years, a quiet rage simmered. Tlingit clans, often rivals, began to forge an unprecedented alliance. They secretly planned a coordinated strike to expel the invaders once and for all. In June 1802, the plan was put into action. Under the leadership of War Chief Kailian, a massive force of Tlingit warriors launched a surprise attack on the Russian fort. The fighting was intense and merciless. The Tlingit, using a combination of traditional weapons and firearms acquired through trade, overwhelmed the defenders. They systematically destroyed the settlement, reclaimed their land, and sent a clear, undeniable message to the Russian Empire: Alaska would not be taken easily. The victory at Sitka was a stunning success for the Tlingit, a moment of powerful resistance that sent shockwaves all the way back to St. Petersburg. But the story doesn't end there. For Baranov and the Russian Empire, this was not just a loss. It was a humiliation they could not let stand. They were already planning their revenge, assembling a much larger, more powerful force. They were determined to return, not just to rebuild their fort, but to crush the Tlingit resistance permanently. The Tlingit knew the Russians would be back, and they began preparing for a second, even more desperate battle. They constructed a new, highly advanced wooden fortress, Shizkei no, or the Fort of the Young Spruce, to make their final stand. The stage was set for an epic rematch, a confrontation that would decide the fate of Alaska. And the outcome of that battle hinged on a single fateful decision, a misunderstanding that would change everything. What was that critical mistake, and how did this final battle unfold? We'll uncover that in part 2. Thanks for watching, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the dramatic conclusion to this forgotten war.